Many political commentators like to talk about former swing states, states that used to be very competitive and were often decided by close margins, that nowadays get little to no attention and just aren't truly competitive in the same sense that they once were. When discussing these states, many raise Missouri and Ohio as the best examples. Others bring up Tennessee. But there is perhaps no former swing state as underrated as Arkansas, a state that voted for Bill Clinton twice and was competitive for much of the 2000s, that today is just a solidly Republican state, not truly competitive anymore. The last time Arkansas voted for a Democrat at the presidential level was 1996. It was actually a pretty decisive victory, as Bill Clinton defeated Bob Dole here by a margin of nearly 17%. For now, let's talk about what happened 4 years later. In 2000, George W. Bush flipped the state back into the Republican column, narrowly edging out Vice President Al Gore here. This result was significant, as Arkansas had swung over 22% towards the Republicans just one election. This election also served as a pretty good indicator of how much trouble Democrats were in Arkansas, as Gore was a fellow Southerner yet failed to appeal to the majority of voters here. But things only got worse for Democrats from there. George Bush won the state once again, expanding his margin of victory by over 4%. And just to take a second to pause here, let's look at this map. Bush did very well statewide, but he still lost a decent amount of counties sprinkled across multiple regions. John Kerry, his Democratic opponent, managed to stay competitive across the entire state, keeping hopes of future Democratic victories alive, though still greatly unlikely. But in 2008, something really weird happened. Barack Obama won the presidency and famously did very well nationwide, winning 9 states that had voted for George Bush the prior election and receiving over 10 million more votes than John Kerry. But in Arkansas, we saw the exact opposite occur. The state zoomed towards Republicans, voting for John McCain by 20 points. To this day, many election analysts dispute why Arkansas bucked the national trend in 2008. Some say that McCain outperformed Bush simply because Arkansas was trending towards Republicans and was thus bound to get redder over time. Others say that Bush was just abnormally weak in the state due to a lack of rural strength and energy, thus making it easier for McCain to turn out more voters. But the most common theory is that there is a much darker truth to why Arkansas moved so much against Obama in 2008. Unfortunately, it lies in racism. It is almost consensus now among American political analysts that the reason Obama performed so much worse than Kerry was that some people in Arkansas simply weren't comfortable voting for a black presidential candidate, and thus switched from being Democrats to voting for a Republican. This theory is backed up by the fact that a white Democrat, Senator Mark Pryor, was easily reelected on the same day, winning every single county in the state. Democrats began to see the final remnants of their once dominant 1990s unravel in the 2010 midterms. Senator Blanche Lincoln was unseated by a solid margin, and this election marked the last time to date the Democrats won a congressional seat in the state of Arkansas. In 2012, that very seat flipped Republican, and Obama lost the state by 24%. The 2014 midterm saw the final pieces of the puzzle come together for Republicans, as Mark Pryor, the Democrat who had won his Senate race easily in 2008, was defeated by Republican Tom Cotton. Republicans also flipped the governorship, officially securing a full GOP control over the state that had once been solidly Democratic. To recap, 1996 was the last time a Democratic presidential candidate won Arkansas, 2008 was the last time a Democrat won a Senate seat in Arkansas, and 2010 was the last time the Democrats won a statewide race or congressional seat in Arkansas. Since then, it's been all Republican. In the 2020 Senate race, the seat once held by Mark Pryor, Democrats didn't even bother to put up a candidate. It's clear that, like many other states in the South, Arkansas has moved away from the Democratic Party, but at a rate almost incomprehensibly rapid. Thus, it's important to take a look at where these shifts are coming from and where Republicans are improving the most. The best place to start with Arkansas is 2004. This was the last election that it was a true competitive state, and it's also the first election I can find reliable exit polling for. This here is a map that I made that depicts the swing in each county of Arkansas between 2004 and 2020. As you can probably tell, it's a pretty amazing map for Republicans. All but 3 counties were more favorable to Donald Trump in 2020 than George W. Bush in 2004, and the majority of these counties actually saw greater than 20-point swings towards the GOP. In fact, while making this map, I stumbled upon a few counties in the rural areas that had supported John Kerry, but in 2020 gave Trump upwards of 70% of the vote. Either way, there are a few discernible patterns here. For starters, the rural areas in the west, south, and north are all trending Republican. This is mostly a product of massive Republican improvement with white voters. In 2004, George W. Bush carried white voters by 27 points, already a pretty strong margin. But in 2020, white voters in Arkansas backed Donald Trump by 46%, paving the way for him to improve in these rural areas. This swing is reflected in both exit polls. In 2004, voters who told CNN they lived in rural areas only backed Bush by 11, but in 2020, Trump won these voters by 43. Thus, it's abundantly clear that much of Arkansas's swing towards the Republicans can be attributed to white rural voters simply becoming more and more reliably conservative. But that doesn't tell the full story. As you can see on this map, it wasn't only these majority white rural areas that swung towards Trump. He also did better than Bush in the eastern Delta counties, which are a plurality black collection of counties on the border with Mississippi and Tennessee. Bush lost every county on the border, while Trump won one of them and came really close in another two. This rightward trend is likely a product of slight Republican improvements with black voters, but mostly an overall decline in population in these areas. The final boost Republicans received in Arkansas between 2004 and 2020 came tied to ideology and personal values. In 2004, George W. Bush lost Arkansas voters who called themselves moderate by 18 points. But in 2020, Trump won these self-identified moderates by 17. Additionally, Arkansas is one of the most pro-life states in the country, with 62% of voters telling 2020 exit polls that they believed abortion should be illegal in all or most cases. And while Democrats have always been the more pro-choice party, in 2004, these policies were significantly less important to many voters, and the issue of abortion was less pronounced. John Kerry didn't really talk about abortion, and both Democratic senators from the state, Mark Pryor and Blanche Lincoln, actually consider themselves to be pro-life. So while many pro-life voters in Arkansas may have been comfortable voting Democratic back in 2004, it became significantly harder for them in 2020, and it will likely be even more difficult in the post-Roe era where the Democrats are a firmly pro-choice party. On the surface, Arkansas may seem like a state that doesn't have particularly interesting politics. But when you look at the trends that have defined Arkansas's voting patterns over the past 25 years, things pretty clearly become more interesting. Arkansas is defined by its conservative values, and its shift towards Republicans isn't actually because the state's demographics or population changed. It's because, in the eyes of the voters, the Democratic Party changed. In politics, perception is all that matters. For this reason, Arkansas will stay red for years to come. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like animated mini-documentaries like these, please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Subscribing helps me out a lot and ensures that more people see this type of content, so please do take the time to just click that button. Let me know which dates you'd like to see next, and I'll see you all in the next one.